South Africa has been in the spotlight on a global scale for its proactive stance and support for Palestine in the midst of Israel's ongoing carpet bombing, forcible displacement, and organized starvation campaign on the people of Gaza. But this is nothing new. South Africa has a long history of supporting and collaborating with Palestine politically and strategically, as its Minister of Foreign Affairs reminded us on March 8th.
Didn't meet the Palestinian people on October 8th. We've been together in struggle for many, many decades. The people of Palestine trained the freedom fighters of the liberation movement. This is a relationship of freedom fighters, of activists, of nations that share a history of struggle for justice and freedom.
So you heard it. The support is rooted in South Africa's own experience with apartheid and its struggle for freedom and equality. But what we more rarely hear about is that the Rainbow Nation that abolished apartheid in 1994 is still grappling with the pervasive remnants of this oppressive system, and that racial inequalities remain prevalent today, especially in the Western Cape. Although apartheid officially ended 3 decades ago, the lingering sense of segregation remains deeply entrenched in the province's main city, Cape Town, and its surroundings. Cape Town is this gorgeous city with breathtaking mountain and beach views, beautiful architecture, amazing food and cultural spaces, and an open door to the outstanding South African wine country. But it's also a city where wealth and poverty have a color and a face, where extreme hardship has been passed on from a generation to the next in the same communities. Decades of enforced segregation have left an indelible mark on the city's urban landscape, whereby a majority of white people still live in prized areas like downtown or residential suburbs, and an overwhelming number of Black and colored people live in poor and disenfranchised peripheral townships. This is what Lucy Campbell, a researcher and activist advocating for people of color in the Cape to reclaim their identity by reclaiming their history, has been calling out for decades. I met her earlier this year in Cape Town, and she told me about how Black and colored South Africans were specifically forced out of the city during apartheid to live in the Cape Flats.
The Cape Flats is a place where we were dumped, from colonialism into a sort of wage labor into District 6. This is like sort of the rolling from colonialism, the genocide of the indigenous people, into slavery, and then slaves moved out of the city. Many stayed in the city, and District 6 were one of the areas they stayed in. Mm-hmm. My grandfather was just on the other side. They lost their land. A lot of our people don't get a chance to come to Cape Town. They don't get the chance to come to the beach. Many of our people are waiting on homes, on houses. A lot of the people are dying without receiving their house.
Now, as you can see on this story map by ArcGIS, this expropriation campaign has over time contributed to a very large income gap between whites, which consists of only 9% of the South African population, and Black and colored South Africans. You may have noticed that I used the word colored here. Well, in the South African context, this word that is still used today refers to an ethnic classification that was made during apartheid, and that consists primarily of persons of mixed race African, Asian, and European ancestry. And oftentimes, Western Cape natives that fit the description refer to themselves as coloreds. You may remember the whole controversy that was sparked in the US after Afropop rising star and Grammy Award winner Tyla described herself as a colored woman in an interview a few months ago. And the controversy also exists locally. Lucy Campbell, for one, strongly rejects this word and its framing, as she believes it's a pure construct of the apartheid regime aimed at creating divisions amongst the oppressed.
The construct is very firm with a colored person, and very firm with their understanding of who they are. Their understanding as a colored person is that you are better than a Black person, but you are not Black. You are colored.
But you're also not white.
No, you're not white, but there is some white in you. The white is more sort of acceptable. How they controlled the colored person was according to their hair. Mm. There was a lot of things that they used to the colored person. They used to call the colored person the master's boy. You'll find the colored person holding the pipe of the master. They were there for the master. No. For me, that is a colored person. A colored person that, when you ask them from where are they will give you that their parents are from Dutch descent or their parents are from Scottish descent. But they won't say that their parents are from African descent. So the colored person, I always tell them when they say they're colored, I say, don't say that. You make me sad when you say you're a colored person. Now let me tell you about who you really are. Then they are amazed to know how beautiful they are. The story now, but I'm also resisting. I'm resisting the lies that our people are being told about themselves and who they are, and that they continue to believe it. I still mirror those things that we were born with. I only started understanding that there are other black people in this country when I was a teenager. I went to a shop, went to buy something, and I heard someone speaking with a click. And I went home and I said to asked my mother, so she said, no, but that's just a black person. Go sit in hospitals on a Friday evening, Saturday evening, Sunday evening. Then you see who walks through that door and who has the most blood on them. If you look at statistics at our prisons, you find it's our boys that are sitting. It's our girls that are sitting there.
It's indeed this very community that struggles the most with substance abuse and crime today. In 2012, the population of the Western Cape was as follows: 48.8% of coloreds, 32.8% of Black Africans, 15.7% of whites, 1% of Asians. But the same year, the individuals treated at drug treatment facilities in the Western Cape were 71% colored. According to research conducted by Rajendra Shetty in 2015, illicit drug use has a lot to do with the injustice of South Africa's discriminatory apartheid legacy, and it's a symptom of social engineering which must be perceived sociologically. And in fact, some of those roots can be traced back to the Cape's slavery era. Slavery was a key feature of the Cape Colony from its establishment by the Dutch East India Company in the 1650s until the abolition of slavery in the British Empire in the 1830s. During that period, slaves were imported from a wide range of areas in the Indian Ocean world, including India, Sri Lanka, maritime Southeast Asia, Madagascar, and Mozambique. Slaves that arrived started to work on settler farms alongside the indigenous Khoisan inhabitants of the Cape. The slaves, Khoisan, and their descendants subsequently became the main laboring class of the colonial Cape region. And you may have guessed it, quite similarly to how British settlers made sure to render the Native Americans that they didn't exterminate vulnerable and dependent by paying them in alcohol and then condemning them for loitering and public drinking. Well, the DEIC imposed the dot system in the Cape Colony. It all started when a settler by the name of Van Riebeeck wrote to the company's authorities in the Dutch East Indies to bring slaves to carry out manual and hard work and replace the Dutch in the wine farm.
Intergenerational trauma. If you look at statistics, especially with regards to the DOP system, you know what the DOP system is, the TOT system, is when workers were paid in alcohol for wages. Okay. Now that system is very much prevalent. If you look at statistics with the fetal alcohol syndrome disorder, you find mostly in the colored community. Alcoholism, in the colored community. You find domestic violence, gender abuse, a lot of that in the colored. Why? Because of wine.
This dot system resulted in alcohol addiction, which contributed to workers engaging in crime. In the end, it also resulted in the spreading of the stigma that these groups were inherently alcoholic and violent. But interestingly, when you visit the Slave Lodge Museum in Cape Town, these significant facets of the slave industry and the enduring effects that it's had on marginalizing people of color in the Cape are barely touched upon. And it is exactly this whitewashed version of history that Lucy Campbell has been fighting against by conducting her own tours that offer a different perspective on the past and connect the dots between struggles, including that of South Africa and Palestine.
First and foremost, to acknowledge the genocide. To acknowledge the forced sort of assimilation, all those ugly things that happened to us as human beings. Where does it come from? Who was responsible? Understanding ourselves, understanding our environment, our food that we eat. It's everything about the colony, everything about what is happening now and the spilling over of the colony into this new, supposedly newness. The story is a relevant story to all of us globally. If you look at Cape Town, you find that this is a white city. The city is owned by white people. The capital that's here is mostly for white people. The privilege that's here is mostly for white people. There's a few of us, and I include myself, some of us, we were lucky. Or, I'm the only one in the family that went to university. Yes. So the New South Africa is not the New South Africa. It's a struggle. We are in a struggle. If you remember, during apartheid, one of the concessions was that museums will stay as they are, and that the people that were working in museums, they stay there. So a lot of the museums were run and managed by white Afrikaners. If I say Afrikaners, I mean the Boere, the whites, the Afrikaans speaking, they were in these positions. And the poor whites and the poor English, they were in these positions. So the curators were Afrikaners, they were white. So now you can understand how the interpretation would look like. The only way we can heal Hannane is to tell the story, the memory, what had happened, and to tell the story of Palestine. And the colonial history of Palestine is very important. In this story now that is happening with Palestine and what's happening with us. You know, you're seeing the sorrow in Palestine. Our sorrows are here. You might not see it because of the sugar-coatedness. Corrupt and be defiant, because we come from a resistant community and we aren't going to give up, you know. And we know that we are rich in who we are, you know, and we will call you out, and we're not ignorant. This is what we want them to know, and that we are here. You know that war cry I told you about? We are here, ons is here. It's in caps. So that is what we're preaching to our young people, to stand up straight. Don't bow. Don't bow. Yes, to be proud. It's only peace when it concerns everyone, and also it's about anything about us. Without us, it's not going to work. So we need to be part of this. Otherwise, you can fuck off. That's what we say. We are strong. We're strong in that. We are African people. Yes. First and foremost. First and foremost, we are African people. We're not going to give that up. And it's going to be time. It's going to take time to uncover, you know, but we're going to tell our people, and we're going to continue telling the truth.